When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouthwatering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello, welcome to AI Scouted on Anfield Index Pro. I'm Dave Hendrick, joined by Mr. Guy Drinkle. How are you, sir?
How many points?
Well, we did say quarter past, and then I said I was going to be about 5 minutes late, but I've been here 10 minutes now. So I'm guessing like 400 for Karl and like 5 for me. Because this was Karl's time to do this, remember?
Thing is, you communicated you were going to be late as well.
Exactly. I was early to not early, but I let you know in advance that I would be a few minutes late, and then was exactly the number of minutes late that I said I would be. We have not heard from Karl Matchett. So Karl might jump on at some point of this pod, and if he does, we'll mock him at that point. But we're going to get going anyway. Guy, we're here to discuss the Champions League. So before we get to our game, let's just quickly hit on the other games. Slovan Bratislava versus Dinamo Zagreb, PSV against Girona, Dortmund against Sturm Graz, Celtic Leipzig, Lille Juventus, Sporting against City, which is interesting, and Real Madrid Milan. Plus our game, it's actually quite a good night of Champions League games.
Yeah, absolutely is. I mean, we all want to watch Slovan, don't we, when a game?
No, not that one, but the other one, we will play both of those teams, PSV, Girona. So that might be one for Liverpool fans to watch prior to ours, just to get a handle on what we'll be facing later in this competition.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I mean, PSV, it's so hard to gauge Eredivisie sides, isn't it? We've obviously been sceptical because, well, there was a certain bald manager in the league who had a big reputation and came in and was kind of awful. And now we've got a new shiny one who's actually doing the Eredivisie proud. So this might be the answer. Oh, Peter Bosch is also bald and Dutch, isn't he? The trifecta. But no, it's an interesting one, isn't it? But Girona kind of got gutted in the summer, whereas PSV, it's just a funny league. But yeah, it is a fun night. Obviously, Real Madrid, we play after the international. Is that the first one after the international break? Yeah. Milan, we've obviously already played. But in terms of Premier League interest, that Sporting Man City one is interesting for numerous reasons now, seen as the Sporting director of football is obviously joining Man City. Ruben Amorim was heavily linked to go to Man City if Pep does go, but he's obviously gone to the red side of Manchester, so it'll be a weird game considering nobody wants to be at Sporting, seemingly. But it'll be an interesting spotlight on Ruben Amorim, I should say, considering who the hell he's joining in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, and with City looking a bit shaky, having lost to Bournemouth at the weekend as well, might be an opportunity for Sporting to punish them. There's some very interesting players at Sporting that I think we might look at over the next year or so as well. So, yeah, plenty to throw your eyes on to. And obviously Real against Milan is just one of those historic Champions League kind of clashes. Two of the truly great clubs in Europe. Real having a weird season, Milan having a weird season. Could be one to watch. But on to our game, we take on Bayer Leverkusen at Anfield. Now, obviously, last year, there was a lot of reason for Liverpool fans to watch Leverkusen, Xabi being the biggest one. And then when Jurgen left, I think a lot of people kind of threw their support behind the idea of Alonso taking over. And you couldn't really blame them at the time because, well, he put together an unbeaten league campaign. He also won the German Cup. And he got them to the final of the Europa League where they got walloped by Atalanta, who had walloped us. But last season, Alonso really did establish himself as like one of the next great managers, one of the best young guys in the world. This season, they haven't looked nearly as good. Now, there wasn't huge change on the playing staff. They bring in Belosian, they bring in Alex Garcia, Martin Terrier, and Nordi Mukiele. So 4 players come in, but only 3 who made any kind of impact last year go out. Josip Stanisic goes back to Bayern Munich after a loan. Adam Hložek goes to Hoffenheim, and they loan out Kasunu. And I thought at the time the Kasunu out, Mukiele in thing was weird because I don't understand why you'd loan out one to loan in the other, and I think overall get a little bit worse. I did like the signings of Garcia after what he'd done at Girona, and of Terrier, who I've been watching for a couple of years. And Belosian looks a star in the making. So I assumed we would see them not necessarily carry on at the same level because impossible to repeat what they did last year. But I didn't think... Now, I say struggling, they're 3rd in the league. But they don't look nearly as formidable as they did last year. And in the league, last 5 games, only 1 win with 4 draws. And they've been beaten already this season, which didn't happen at all last season.
Yeah, and they're actually 4th in the league now. I know they've got a game in hand, but it's not great when there's already a decent gap between them and Bayern. Excuse me, they don't have a game in hand. I was looking at the wrong table. Google formatted weirdly. But yeah, I mean, to be 7 points behind Bayern Munich, who I obviously don't watch the Bundesliga because I'm a late sub. We will keep reminding people because Karl match at Skyven. But to be that far behind Bayern, who we've already seen in Europe get shown up multiple times already, it's clearly not the best and most classic Bayern side ever. But at the same time, they're still behind RB Leipzig, a team who have been obviously built for ages to be a Premier League Bundesliga challenger, but never really came off, not come too close in the past. And Eintracht Frankfurt is like a club that's just in a constant state of rebuilding. It's not a great look. And you look at the pressure of someone like Nuri Sahin, who's at Dortmund, another ex-Liverpool midfielder, slightly different Liverpool career than Xabi, but to be on the same points as that Dortmund side, who, from even just slight outside glimpses of the Bundesliga, it looks like it's an embarrassing time at Dortmund. So I know there's obviously zero, I think Xabi could probably get them nearly relegated and should be able to keep his job at Leverkusen, considering he's the one who got them over the line and actually winning stuff. But it's clearly not been a good start. And as you mentioned, the draws there. How many times as Liverpool fans have we seen that draws are the things that actually kill your league, your seasons, not losses. It is the draws that do it. It's not really, it's not great, is it? But as you mentioned, there wasn't loads of turnover there. And I think out of the ones you mentioned, it is only Kasunu who I even noticed having an impact. Like Mukiele, or however you pronounce his name, is more of a right back now. I know they play a back three and it's a bit more, he can play right side of the three and whatever, but it just doesn't really make sense. I mean, looking at their side that drew with Stuttgart at the weekend, they're playing a back three with Nordi Mukiele as the right wing back. Like, isn't this Jerry? If you're picking a World 11 and you're picking a wing back, I'm guessing Jeremy Frimpong would be quite high on that list. Maybe after Hakimi as a natural wing-back, you're probably picking Frimpong. You'd obviously have someone like Trent, but he's never really played that role. But
yeah, as a wing-back,
yeah,
you're looking at... You might look Pedro Porro,
yeah,
played as a wing-back, but certainly I don't think you get past your top three without naming Frimpong. So that's a little bit weird. And like you say, like Dortmund, there's a lot of pressure already on Nuri Sahin, and yet they've got the same points as Leverkusen have. And Eintracht, as you said, they're constantly churning through players, and they've got a point more. And Leipzig, who, like, with the greatest respect, are no great shakes, they've got more points. And it's not just them. Like, you look below them, and you've got Freiburg on the same number of points, who changed manager in the summer, massive departure that there with Christian Streich, who'd been there forever, stepping down. Now, it was a trusted lieutenant stepping up. But Union Berlin, who this time last season looked certain to get relegated, they're only a point behind. So while Leverkusen are in fourth, it's not a convincing fourth place. And there's two numbers that stand out to me when I look at the league table and where Leverkusen sit. So last season, in the 34 league games that Bayer Leverkusen played, they drew 6 games. They've already drawn 4 this year. That's a concern. And when you look at who they've played, I mean, a draw away to Bayern's a good result. A draw at home to Holstein Kiel is a dreadful result.
Yeah.
A draw at home to Stuttgart is fine. Stuttgart finished top 4 last season. Obviously, they've fallen back a bit this year. They lost key players, but they're only 3 points behind Leverkusen. But the draw away to what is a distinctly average Werder Bremen team, that's concerning. They lost at home as well to Leipzig. Then you look in the Champions League. As things currently stand, they went to Feyenoord and beat them heavily. They scraped past Milan, and then a draw with Brest in the last game. Like, they're 1 point better off than Dortmund in the Champions League, level on points in the Bundesliga, and yet Nuri Sahin, who's just taken over, is already under significant pressure. You are right when you say Alonso I think he could actually get them relegated into this job.
Full clock. They could have them.
They've never won a title before. They'd only ever won the German Cup once. He won both of them in his first full season. It's an amazing achievement. He is a god there. They'll build a statue of him at some point. But it just, something is off this year with them. And the other number, and I think this points to what is off with them. Last season, through the entirety of the Bundesliga campaign, 34 games, they conceded 24 goals. This season, through 9 games, they've already conceded 15. That's the number that concerns me. And if you look back at the early fixtures, they won 3 and drew 1. Won 3 and lost 1 of the first 4, but the scorelines at the time concern me.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. Ha. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
They beat Borussia Mönchengladbach 3-2, conceding 2 goals. Not something that was a frequent factor for them last year. Like last season, needed a very, very late goal to win that game. Then they lose 3-2 to Leipzig at home. So now 2 games in, you've already conceded 5 goals. They beat Hoffenheim 4-1. Then they beat Wolfsburg, but they beat them 4-3. So through 4 games, you've conceded 8 goals. That's very concerning. And through their 9 games, they've already conceded 2 or more on 5 occasions. And that's not something we were used to seeing with Leverkusen last season. Like, to get to 5 games of them conceding 2 or more in the league last season, you're looking at, they did it on the opening game of the season. They conceded 2 in a 3-2 win. They did it in match week 10 in a 3-2 win. They did it in match week 18 in a 3-2 win. They did it in match day 26 in a 3-2 win. And then they did it in a match week 4 draw with Bayern, right? But that's match week 26, March, mid-March, before they conceded 2 or more goals in 5 games. And they've already done that this season. They didn't concede 3 in a league game last season. They've already done that this season. Last season, they only conceded 2 or more goals in the league on 6 occasions. Now they've done it 5 times through 9 games. That defence, which was so important last year, with Jonathan Tah playing his best ever football, with Frimpong and Grimaldo defending way above the level we were used to seeing from them, with Bissounu and Hincapié and Tapsoba all playing well, with Rodaki playing well in goal, and with that midfield performing at such a high level. For much of the season, obviously, you were looking at Ezekiel Palacios and Granit Xhaka. Then Palacios got hurt. Robert Andrich came in. But everybody was putting in constant high-level performances. This season in the midfield, I think Robert Andrich has done pretty well, but he's also missed 5 games. Alex Garcia has not settled in well. Ezekiel Palacios is injured again. And Granit Xhaka has dropped off a massive amount from the level he was at last season. And all of those things factor in to this defence being from one of the best in Europe last season to now maybe something of a liability for them.
Well, there was a lot of questions about Jonathan Tah as well in the summer, wasn't there? He was 1 foot in at Bayern. Hincapié's permanently linked away. Frimpong's permanently linked away. Tapsoba was linked with Newcastle, if I remember correctly. He's even linked with us at some stages. I mean, if you're one of these sides that is kind of just a level down on the food chain, it is. We've seen it with every club. It's hard to maintain the level. So do you think Tah's probably the big one? Because is he captain?
He is captain, yeah.
Is he? I thought it was hard.
Yeah.
He was just... But yeah, that him basically admitting he wants that.
Oh, you could be right. Maybe Hrdecki is club captain.
I'm pretty sure they're at least captain and vice captain, I'm pretty sure.
No, I think you're right. I think Hrdecki is captain and Tah is vice captain. But
yeah,
Tah is the leader of that defence. He's the organiser. He's the vocal one. And like, it's not like a thing where he was just linked to Bayern and then it went away. That dragged on all summer. And there were some public statements from him and from his agent making it very clear he wants to go to Bayern Munich.
Mm-hmm.
And to my knowledge, he's got this year left in his contract and then he's a free agent. There's no way he's fully committed to the cause. No chance. He wanted to go in the summer, the move got blocked. And now in the final year of his deal, he's not going to risk anything. He's not going to risk a serious injury that might scupper that big money move in the summer when he's going to be the one that gets the big fee. Like, he'll get that huge signing on bonus because he's out of contract. That's a factor. And then, as you said, like Hincapié, every couple of weeks, he's linked with somebody else. Frimpong, the same. Tapsoba, as you said, he was linked with Toon. He's linked with Chelsea. He's been linked with us. He was linked with AC Milan at one point. Like, all of these players, it has to be spinning their head a little bit. You've also got a situation where everybody knows that the manager's not there long term.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that at some point he's going to leave for Real Madrid or Bayern Munich, and we were obviously on that list, but we're not anymore. But we will be in the future again. This is probably his last season there. So again, you've got players who might well be looking at it and thinking, well, if you're not committed here long term, why would I be? And then the best player at the club is Florian Wirtz. And everybody knows he's going to leave and go to Bayern or Real or Barca or City or wherever. So, it is just very hard for a club like this to sustain a consistent level season to season. 3 years ago, Gerardo Sioni comes in, gets them top 4 against expectations into the Champions League. Following season starts disastrously. They sack him. No thoughts of let's let him work through it. But they bring in Alonso. He rectifies things, gets them back in the right direction. And then last year, obviously, they had the incredible season. This season, based on the history of Bayer Leverkusen, you would kind of expect them to drop off anyway. And the big part of that is they're not a destination club. They've had some amazing players there over the years. But every time they get a great one, the clock just starts. When they buy a player or they produce a player from their academy, the clock immediately starts on when is this player going to leave? Because nobody thinks they're going to stay there. It's a bit different with your Granit Xhaka's who's going back to Germany at 31. You can say with certainty, well, we're giving him a 4-year contract. He'll be here 4 years or 3 years and then we'll move him on. But with a Wirtz, before him Havertz, before him Brand, it's always right, we've got this great young player. How long will we have them? How long are we going to be able to keep them? When Frimpong went there and started to do well, it was the same thing. With Top-Sop, it's the same thing. Every time they get Victor Boniface, he signs last summer, and within 2 months, there's talk of Chelsea for 65 million, United for 65 million. They don't even get time to fully enjoy and appreciate the fact that they've got a gem in their ranks because there's just constant vultures. And it's the same now with their manager. That can't be a healthy environment all the time. It really can't.
Speaking of unhealthy environment, what time do you call this, Karl?
There he is.
Now, in fairness, I have been listening to Dave's monologue here for quite some time.
I know, but I'll take 5 points off.
I think 5 is reasonable, although you can take your pick if we're blaming the national transport system, sausage producers, and or my own timekeeping. I'll let you choose.
I think we just blame all 3.
Yeah.
Points.
Yeah.
Mr. Matchett.
Yeah.
We are discussing Bayer Leverkusen.
Which is just as well, because Liverpool are playing them.
And the fact that there's been a significant drop-off with them last season. So the 2 things I was highlighting with Guy, number 1, 4 draws already this season, only 6 in all of last season. Last season, defensively, outstanding. A genuinely impressive defensive record, conceding only 24 goals, only conceding 2 or more on 6 occasions, only conceding 2 on 6 occasions, never conceding more. This season, 2 or more on 5 occasions already, 15 goals conceded, and have conceded 3 in 2 different games. There's, I think, significant reason for concern over whether or not they can, even sustain a real challenge to defend their title.
Yeah, I think the you were mentioning the midfield there. I think that's definitely going to be one of the big issues is probably one of the right words, to be perfectly honest. But also, if you look at a couple of individuals compared to last season, say, obviously last year they got ridiculous productivity out of their wing-backs. Grimaldo and Frimpong, guy I mentioned there, was like quite quickly spoken about going elsewhere. Like last season, on a per 90 basis, Frimpong is averaging like far more shots than he is at the minute. He's not getting in the similar sorts of areas, so he's obviously not contributing at the minute. I think it was like double figures for Grimaldo and not far off that for Frimpong. But even beyond the starters, last year you had a goal every 150 odd minutes for Patrick Schick, who was the second choice starter. Now he's approaching that for the season, hasn't scored yet, but last year his starts were pretty split domestically in starts and sub appearances, whereas this year it's only sub appearances so far, really. So you are immediately losing out on the regularity, the rhythm, the ability to impact off the bench because he's already sharp and the confidence is there and so on and so forth. If he's very, very clearly a second choice striker, it's a big different thing if you're bringing him on later on in matches when he already knows he's not going to be in the team the next week. Boniface had 1 or 2 injuries last year, but he was also in his first season at the club. He was also probably not necessarily as clinical as even the goal tally allowed at the start of the campaign. So there's a couple of individual reasons there, even within the sort of wider setup that you mentioned.
Last season, between Frimpong and Grimaldo, 19 league goals. As you said, 10 for Grimaldo, 9 for Frimpong. 26 in all competitions, 12 for Grimaldo, 14 for Frimpong. This season, so far, only 3 goals between them in all competitions, only 2 in the Bundesliga. So, they're losing production and these players are not defending nearly as well as they did last season. And whether that's, like me and Guy were talking about, that some of them have had their heads turned with a lot of speculation around their names, like Nkapie, obviously the Jonathan Tah factor, also the manager and all that speculation as well. Nobody really, I don't think it was realistic for Leverkusen to, it wasn't realistic for them to repeat last season. Like what they did last season was just incredible. I'm not sure it was hugely realistic to think they could win back-to-back leagues, but it's not like Bayern, though they've been impressive domestically, it's not like this is a vintage Bayern team and they've got a questionable manager who makes questionable decisions. I didn't think they'd be this far off this early. And I even think, I was saying this to Guy, they're leveling points with Dortmund, and yet the noise coming out of Dortmund is that it's like the end of the world and Sahin is on borrowed time and under significant pressure, and yet they're leveling points with Leverkusen. They've got 1 point less than them in the Champions League, and there's nothing around Alonso. It's still, Alonso's going to get the Real Madrid job. I know he had a great year last year, but he's not being graded really on a fair curve. He's kind of been given a pass for all of this. And I kind of feel like some of this comes down to him and maybe not squashing the speculation around himself and locking in and getting the players to lock in at the same time.
Probably an element of that from himself. Although, to be fair, he did say in the summer, I'm not going, I'm staying, there's more to do here. So I'm not sure how much more he has to come out and say about that. What I would also probably say is if we set Europe aside just for a second, in the Bundesliga, probably there's only 2 results there that I would say were poor, which are draws against Holstein Kiel and Werder Bremen. Like the rest of them are, I wouldn't say that they were awful results at all. Obviously, a little bit of it is circumstantial, in like a draw with Stuttgart just based on last season. You therefore wouldn't say it was terrible, where normally you might say that's big punch dropped at home, for example. But I think it is just those 2 results really. Like drawing 2-2 against Holstein Kiel is obviously woeful. Like they've literally only just won their first game of the entire campaign,
especially when you're 2-0 up.
Yeah, and that's been the thing, hasn't it? It's not seeing out games, whereas last year there was so many times where they were trailing even going into the last 10 minutes of matches, and they had a big finish to turn it around. And now this year it's been the opposite. like multiple times already. They've had victories going into, you know, the latter stage of the game, on the second half of games, and haven't seen that out. That's a big switch.
Yeah, they were 2-0 up at home to Leipzig and ended up losing that one. They were 1-0 and then 2-1 up against Werder Bremen. Like we said, they were 2-0 up against Holstein Kiel. They were leading against Bayern, but that was away. But I have to be honest, I said this to Guy before you came on. The first 4 games, even though they won 3 of them, I was concerned because they conceded 3 goals in 2 of the games. They struggled with Wolfsburg. They struggled with Borussia Mönchengladbach. Needed that kind of late game magic that they'd had last season to hold them to victories in those ones. And it just, you remember last season when we were playing a certain way and people were saying, oh, it's not sustainable, and we were kind of burying our heads in the sand a little bit? It just didn't feel, having learned the lesson from watching us, it just didn't feel as sustainable for them this year. And, you know, 1 win in the last 5 is certainly not the standard that they've set for themselves.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. Like I say, I do think that it's across the board only the 2 results which I would say were, you know, concerning or, you know, really big drop points opportunities or whatever. But the fact is that it's come so many of them in a row, like 1 win out of the last 4 in all competitions. Like I say, one from 5 in the Bundesliga. Those are the things where it starts mounting up, and there you're costing yourself. But had they picked up those 2 wins instead of 2 draws, then they are suddenly only 3 points off. As you rightly say, is a very catchable Bayern Munich, if not the fact that it's Bayern and they do have great players and goal scorers there are plenty. But goals conceded being higher, like you said, with the maybe a bit less buy-in, but certainly less solidity from central midfield area is one problem. But I do think that given the amount of goals that they scored last season, the way that they were conceding and still winning games last year, that's the biggest drop-off so far. Like, yeah, Frimpong in particular. Frimpong was like, he was 2.2 shots per 90 last season. He's like 0.8 this season so far. That's just one player, but he was a big source of goals, chance creation and chance taking himself. So if he's not getting in those areas, and you know, Schick, as we mentioned, is barely involved basically. So how are you going to find rhythm out of him? Second choice striker is therefore probably not going to contribute towards double figures. And last year they had 4 players, I think it was in double figures or very close to double figures for the league campaign. It's very difficult to replicate that unless you have someone, probably just Wirtz or Boniface, having an absolute worldly season.
Hey guys, it's Eddie Gibbs from Anfield Index here. I hope you're enjoying this podcast, and I'm sorry to call time on the show before it ends. In the current climate, it's tougher than ever before to offer podcasts for free. At Anfield Index, we produce over 75 free shows every month, which I'm confident is unparalleled in the LFC sphere. Whilst we'd love to offer everything for free, the production costs now make this impossible. That said, we don't want to follow the model of other channels and lock all of our content behind a paywall. So what we've decided to do is to continue offering every show for free, but cut that offering to 30 minutes on our longer shows. So to get all of our shows in full and enjoy the best of everything we have to offer, we really hope you'll consider supporting the channel and signing up at AnfieldIndexPro.com. For about the price of 1 cup of coffee, you'll get every podcast in full with 0 ads. You'll also get access to our LFC VIP community, where you can enjoy live podcasts, engage with our podcasters, and chat with other Reds in real time. So that website again, AnfieldIndexPro.com. Join today.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.